both called in, Cassandra and I, to sign our contracts.
Right.
And I took one look at her and spun on my heel and left.
So
I was appalled.
So this is a real rip-off.
Oh, total. Yeah, total. It's
So
my
what-
show completely.
So what are you going to do about it, Maya?
Well, I'm suing.
You are?
Yeah, I'm finally suing. I've been trying all these years, but I was unable to get an attorney because I had no money. But I finally have someone who's doing it on consignment. I don't have to pay her out front, and I finally found a nice lady.
So you're bitter about this, aren't you? I mean...
I don't know about bitter. I think philosophically one of my shortcomings is I don't know how to be bitter. If I did, I mean, I think I'd have more drive.
Because when you had your show, Vampira, you had superstars watching you, and they all loved you. You were a cult following here in the 50s, early 50s.
Aren't you sweet?
Because I watched you before I went to Europe.
You
I certainly did. I remember watching you very, very closely. Jimmy Dean was here, and you were very...
Jimmy Dean was on the show one day.
He did.
He was on the Vampire show, yeah.
He came to see you.
Right.
He did it because he loved you, I understand.
Yeah.
You were very close with James Dean.
Yeah. He was my best friend.
How did you meet James?
Well, I had gone to a premiere. It was a premiere of Rum and Holiday, and I wanted to see who makes up the Hollywood, you know, the glittering people of that firmament.
Right.
And I said, there's nobody here I like, nobody, except the kid who is with Terry Moore.
Oh, he was with Terry Moore?
He was with Terry Moore that night, and I didn't know who he was, but I said, that's somebody I want to know. And 12 hours later, he walked into Googie's.
Googie's was the hangout on
That
Sunset?
was a, yeah.
Next to Schwab's.
Next to Schwab's. That was the all-night coffee hangout. But it was afternoon. It was the next afternoon when Jimmy walked in with a little girl, and then somebody effected an introduction, and that's... We were never again separated. Oh, occasionally I went home to my husband.
You were married, were you?
Yes.
Vampira. You were in dark... This is you. And I'm going to show the people this. This is really you. This is a small picture, but can you see that? That is like Elvira. Elvira is really doing Vampira.
Yeah. Well, I did the set for the Elvira show, too, what they call Movie Macabre. I designed the set and everything. But, I mean, it's just a copy of the set I had on Channel 7.
So
the red velvet couch and everything.
So you wrote all the material?
Well, she has a writer now, but no, initially I had a writer, Peter Robinson, and he allowed me to co-write, and then the more I got into the character, the more I understood how to do it.
What's the difference between your show and Elvira's show?
Well,
there is a little difference there?
No, she has put an extra little crown wig, a sort of a Moe wig from Manny Moe and Jack, or some little Moe wig on top of the Vampira wig.
Yes.
She's changed the spelling of the name, and that's it. Those are the only two differences.
So that is your creation.
Yes.
So
there are at least 80 similarities. It's identical. It's my show.
Because it's really a Jane Russell sex there, isn't there? Isn't there a combination of Jane Russell there, of sultry Jane Russell from The Outlaw, the way she's carrying on?
Oh, yeah, baby.
Am I correct?
Yeah,
am I correct?
Yeah. That's right.
Did you sing? Did you sing on the show at all? Or?
Oh, okay. Yes, occasionally little ditties. I sang things like, let's see. Some Like It. I mean, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was just out, and so I did a little Marilyn Monroe parody.
I understand. She watched the show and she loved you. I understand. That's what I was
Norma
told.
Jean, right?
Norma Jean, yeah.
So I sang that Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, just a little phrase or two in this manner, a cappella.
Right.
Now this is Vampira. I'm going to take my glasses off
go
now.
ahead.
This is Vampira doing it. I can recall how it goes. A scar on the hand may be quite continental, but demons are a ghoul's best friend.
I love it.
So to that extent I sang.
What kind of a guy James Dean was when he used to come to your house? I understand he used to come to your house and he used to sit on your porch. I understand he did your porch, painted your porch.
Yeah.
Black?
No.
Blacker, was it?
No, but it was very dark gray. It looked
dark
black.
gray?
It was very dark gray. It looked
Tell
black.
me about that.
Well,
he was a big star then.
No, as a matter of fact, Jimmy was not a big star.
He wasn't?
Then. No. He was well known on Broadway, and Kazan had brought him here, and he had played a lead in a movie, East of Eden, which was not yet released.
Oh, okay.
So, although he had been, you know, touted by Warner Brothers, the world didn't know who he was yet, and not even Googies paid too much attention to him in the very early days. And we'd go in there, and people crowded around me, because believe it or not, I was the girl of the minute, right?
Right.
And Jimmy would be pushed aside, and he'd call to me over the heads, asses and elbows.
Asses and elbows?
Right.
What does that mean?
That's what he had in his face.
Oh, I see.
Everybody was clamoring for me and showing him just rear ends and elbows.
Right.
And then, overnight, his star rocketed, and I mine plummeted, and then the same people were clamoring around him, and I was on the outer fringes, waving at him and saying, asses and elbows, and there were the same asses and the same elbows in my face now.
Did he drive a motorcycle?
In those days, he didn't have an automobile. He had just a motorcycle in the beginning. In the very beginning, yeah.
He always wore jeans, did he?
Always, almost. Well, yes, that was
Why
his
always
uniform.
jeans, you think?
Well, because he was comfortable and he was a farm boy. Jeans are great. Why do people wear jeans today?
True.
They feel great.
True.
Like another skin. And he hated to be encumbered by his clothes. There was enough in life encumbering him, I guess, when you're that sensitive.
Right. Did you do any films when you had your show? Any motion pictures at all?
I did Plan 9 from Outer Space, but in that I didn't play Vampira. I was dressed as Vampira, but I didn't play the role because I was a zombie. You know.
I see. Did you want to be an actress when you first arrived here?
Well, I was brought here by Howard Hawks to...
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Oh,
to be I was going to do a Faulkner film called Dreadful Hollow. I was to be a vampire in that. Well, that never came through. And so I did Vampira instead.
What made you get into the horror films, like into a horror lady? And
oh, well, who knows how these things evolve. But I know that when I was 14 years old, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out, and I fell madly in love with the evil queen.
I see.
Do you know what she looks like?
Yeah.
She's cool, alabaster face, and she has these arched black eyebrows. She had no hair. She was, I think she wore the crown covered everything. But it was depression, and I was very poor. I was a scrawny, demoralized, depression child, and I didn't have any self-assurance. And I saw this image, and I said, that's what I want to be, cool and self-assured.
Yes.
I didn't especially love the evil part, but I love the composure, right?
Cassandra Peterson claims that she has never seen your show. Do you believe that?
I believe she didn't ever see the original Vampira show in those days because she was 10 years old in Kansas or somewhere.
Right, but when she...
But she has all the kinescopes that I was just about to buy. There are 54 private kines I was about to buy.
So she has seen them?
And somebody, well, I think she owns them. Somebody bought them right from under me.
Really?
Yeah, when I was in negotiating with people to buy them. I had tracked them down.
So you had... They're not...
I don't know for sure she saw them, except in February of '82, she proceeded to emulate my performance exactly. And prior to that, she didn't know exactly how to do Vampira. But then now she emulates every gesture.
I'd like the camera to face on Jimmy Dean over there. If you can give me that beautiful observatory. This is going to be at the observatory, the Hollywood Observatory, isn't it?
Griffith Park.
Griffith Park. This is Kenneth Kendalls, and this is the gentleman that is going, he knew Jimmy Dean very well, and this is the gentleman that sculptured the head of Jimmy Dean. And you are presenting it to the...
Yes, I presented it to the city. It took about 3 years to get the thing going. It was based on the fact that Mayor Bradley declared September 30th, 1985, James Dean Day. So I thought, well, the time is ripe for this. So I just wrote him a letter proposing this as a gift, and I said I thought it would be an appropriate ornament for Griffith Observatory because the film Rebel Without Cause was shot there. So Dr. Krupp, the director, was enthusiastic from the beginning, but it took a long time to get the thing ironed out, and earlier this year it was passed by the Department of Recreation and Parks, and it had to go through City Hall, and was accepted, and will be unveiled this November 1st, which is a Tuesday, and that's under the auspices of a group called Friends of Griffith Observatory. They're handling that part of it.
Now, who's going to unveil this?
We haven't really got...
This beautiful... Can you get a good shot on that again for me? I'd like to see the people look at that real... who's going to really unveil
We haven't really got the right person. We were hoping for one of the leading ladies, but one is in the east and the other one is otherwise occupied. So,
this lady knew Jimmy Dean.
Yeah.
They were very close.
Well, she might be the person.
And he loved her when he first arrived in this town. She would be wonderful coming out of...
Well, we had suggested that if she were delivered in a hearse and, and tipped out of a coffin and stepped, because nothing succeeds like bad taste. That would get that would get the coverage that we would like to have. But the fact that the statue is going to be there for, we hope, a long, long time, and it makes it a center because there's tour buses, like people from Japan, showing up there. The first thing they head right down and back for the place where the knife fight in Rebel took place and start snapping pictures of one another.
You knew Jimmy very well.
I knew James Dean for 1 hour.
1 hour?
It was I received a telephone call from an emissary saying that the actor, James Dean, would like to meet me. Would I like to meet him?
Right.
That was he showed up about half an hour later, and I never really timed it, but there were 6 Chesterfield butts in the ashtray at the end of the interview, however long that takes, and he had really come there. He wanted to ask me if I would be interested in sculpting him, which he finally did.
So
I thought it was just as Maila said, East of Eden hadn't been released. He was Quantity X. We'd heard a lot about him, but we didn't know what he could do. And when he asked me about the sculpture, I was thinking to myself, you really think you're in this world class of people that I'm doing? But I was very, I was taken with the fact
You've been doing a lot of people. You did Marlon Brando without knowing him either.
That was... the Marlon Brando is what attracted James Dean.
Is that what it?
Yeah, because Brando wasn't interested in his sculpture. I've done some others.
You did this right here. I love this. May I show this?
Yeah,
this is beautiful. Look at this. If my camera girl can get this.
Technically, it's what they call a dummy board.
Can you get that, darling? That is just beautiful. Kendall. It's Kenneth Kendall.
Right.
And how long you been in Hollywood, Kenneth?
I was born on Wilshire Boulevard.
Well, you're
Good Samaritan Hospital. I'm native. And went to school here.
You've been an artist for...
Ever since.
Ever since?
Yeah, I was always kind of the artist in school.
What was your first sculpture? I mean, your first. Who was your first?
I hadn't touched sculpture for about 15 years.
Right.
When I started the Brando head. Someone else said they were going to do a head of Brando, and I thought, I'm going to do a head of Brando.
I see.
So I just picked it up, and that was very successful, as I say, except with Marlon, and attracted Dean, which was really the main thing.
Maila, did James Dean really looked up to Brando at the time? Tell me, what would you say?
Oh, Marlon, I think, was his god.
He was?
Yeah, I think so. Marlon was his god.
What made it his god? What would you think? Why?
Well, the fact that maybe the fact that Jimmy was in love with himself, because they had I mean psychically, not with his own face, but with his own entity, because they were very similar people, and Jimmy was alone in a world and strange, and there wasn't much he could really identify with, but I think he could identify with Marlon, and that intensified his desire. And then Marlon rejected him, and you know what rejection does to the human beast.
Yes. He was very sensitive, wasn't he?
Who, Marlon or Jimmy?
No, Jimmy. Jimmy.
Oh, yes, of course.
Very sensitive young man.
Yes.
He loved to be alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think made him so that way growing up in Indiana, isn't
morose?
It? Yes. What? Yeah.
Well, he was an only child who was abnormally close to his mother. His father was kind of cool and detached and busy. And then Mama just, as Jimmy said, when Jimmy was only 9, he said, cut out.
He was a farm boy, and he went to New York, and then he got on Broadway.
Yeah.
He had a rough time in New York.
Had a hard time.
Yeah, he went to Jerry's spaghetti place, and they used to feed him spaghetti. Jerry's restaurant used to feed him spaghetti.
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Yeah, he knew a lot of hunger.
He was what sign was Jimmy Dean?
Aquarius.
Was he?
Yeah. Aquarius. Tomorrow, you know what day tomorrow is?
No, I don't.
Oh, maybe I shouldn't say that.
Please do.
It's the 33rd anniversary of his death.
Oh, it is.
September 30th.
How did that take you when you first heard of Jimmy Dean's
Well, I didn't believe it. I mean, nobody who knew Jimmy, you couldn't believe it, because a person who is so vital, so incredibly intense, it's impossible to picture them, still and unanimated.
But he was a fast driver.
Oh, yeah, he was, fast and reckless.
Yeah, because I had James Bacon on my show, and he saw Jimmy Dean one night, and he says, God, if you don't slow down, young man, you're going to get killed.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, after that, he got killed.
Oh,
James Dean told me.
Yeah.
That's what James Bacon told
said,
me. Yes. Tell me about Jimmy Dean in your days. You said you only met him for 1 hour, but for that 1 hour, what stuck in your mind with that man?
Well, the thing was, he came in, and what you saw needed a shave, was horn-rimmed, looking a little kind of grubby, and...
That's Jimmy all the time, isn't
Grubby.
Yeah, but at the end of the interview, he had stepped out of the door and turned around and put his hand out and looked up in my eyes and smiled, and that, I say, a wreath of dimples, and he turned himself into the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. There is no photograph of what I saw, and it was just like being struck by lightning to see this beautiful face. And he was truly grateful for the fact, you know, that I had said, yes, we're going to do the sculpture and so forth. So I think he sort of threw the whole personality at me and that thing, and it may well have been his double whammy. It might have been something that he staged, but boy, did it work.
Now that
It was
jacket,
like yesterday.
that jacket you got on.
This this is a replica of the jacket that he had on at the time. And I had a folio of stuff of Brando, which he wanted to look through. So he set that out on the couch, and he still had the jacket on. So he got up off the coffee table sitting, peeled out of it very slowly, held it out like that at arm's length, and just opened his hand and let the thing crunch on the floor. And I was sitting over in that direction. He looked over to see how the oddball action had affected me. And I see that face all the time in photography, you know, when he looked over at the thing. But he certainly made an impression.
Kenneth, this is Jimmy Dean's...
Well, that's the model photographed on the site there at at the observatory.
At the observatory? I see.
And
this is the observatory right
yeah,
here. Yes.
That gives you a better idea.
Wait,
it hits the
yeah,
the
I
wall,
see.
or
There's the
will.
observatory.
Yeah.
I see. Jimmy, ever talked about that wonderful picture with Sal Mineo?
Yeah, well, I was...
Sal and him were very, very close, weren't they?
No, they weren't.
They weren't?
No, they weren't.
Now, why did a lot of people think they were very close?
Well, because publicists have said so. But Sal Mineo was a very young boy, and Jimmy didn't associate with teenagers. He was a young adult. He was busy associating with people his own age.
Oh, okay.
And a little older, but he admired older people.
He liked you, though, didn't he? He came to you, and he got some advice. And what kind of advice did you give him, Maila?
Oh,
young man, what would you...
let's see. Well, for one thing, we were driving up Sunset Plaza Drive.
Right.
I was in, Jack Simmons had an antique hearse that we rode in.
Yes.
And Jimmy was on his motorcycle in front of us. Well, he was going up, you know how the road curves?
Yes, right.
He was in front of us at night, and our headlights were like a spotlight to him. And he was going this way on his motorcycle, like his hands over his head. He was swaying his hips so that the motorcycle was almost lying on its side. And any car coming down the other way would not have seen him. He would have been killed instantly.
I see. They like to carry on, those kids, though.
And he wouldn't stop. I was yelling out of the window, stop, stop. So the only way we were able to get him to stop was to pull over to the side and turn our lights off so that he no longer had a stage and an audience. And then he ultimately pulled over. But I mean, I told him not to. I told him about animals. He was shooting rabbits, and Marlon had sent a message that there's nothing clever about that. And so I did tell Jimmy that I did not approve of his killing animals. But otherwise I didn't give him a lot of personal advice.
Did he take any dope, you think, Maila?
I know he didn't.
He didn't?
He smoked marijuana a couple of times. He didn't even drink. He drank a lot of coffee.
He drank a lot of coffee.
Yeah, Jimmy had a natural high. He was a genius. He just had a natural high.
Christopher Jones. We have an actor by the name of Christopher Jones. Doesn't drink. Doesn't take dope. Drinks a lot of coffee. People think he takes dope. And am I right, Kenneth? Kenneth, I've known Chris Jones a long time. A lot of people think he was on dope. He's never been on dope.
Well, you know,
the coffee just winds you up.
In the early days, Orson Welles and I discussed the fact that people always thought that he had never tasted alcohol, and people would think that he was on drugs.
Yes, yes.
And me too. I was totally temperate in my early years. I had never even sipped wine. People always thought I was drunk. But it's something about a natural chemistry that some people have an abnormal intensity.
I have that.
I know you do.
Yes, I do, darling.
I know you do. Do people think you're drunk when you're sober or high on something?
Exactly, because
you are high on the natch.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I'm that way.
Right.
Tell me, what are you going to do about Elvira? I mean, that
I want
Cassandra Peterson. What do you think you want to do with it?
Well, I've sued her, right?
Yes, right.
We haven't served the papers yet, I guess. I don't know what my
would you like her to do for you? I mean...
what would I like her to do for me?
Yes, what would you like?
Well, ideally, I would like her...
She's made a lot of money. She's made a lot of money on your ideas, you know.
What I would like her to do is something impossible. I'd like her to develop a conscience. I don't think she's able to do that. But
What do you mean? I don't know. What do you mean you want her to develop a conscience? Like
Well, if
what?
she had a
What do you-
conscience, she'd cease behaving. She'd stop taking things that are not hers if she had a conscience.
There's a
Or else she'd take them and suffer. Instead, she's proud of her acts, right? I'd like her to develop a conscience, and I'd like her to cease and desist. Of course, that's not arbitrarily the only business tack. Perhaps my lawyer has other ideas, but I would like her to cease and desist.
I see.
I don't want her doing Vampira. For one thing, she's too old. She's past the big 4-0, and Vampira, you know, shouldn't be more than, shouldn't
should
look
be-
more than 30,
So there should be
40
another
ever.
girl. Well, she's got a new movie out now. This is her
Yeah.
first film,
Yeah,
and it's going to be very successful, I understand.
possibly.
How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
Well-
Are you bitter about that? Come on, you know, Elvira's got a big movie now. You started it. This is your idea.
Well, they do say, what do they say about imitation? Two things.
Right.
Sincerest compliment or sincerest form of plagiarism.
Right.
I think it's the sincerest form of plagiarism. I'm not thrilled, but by the same token, I know it's my creative imagination. Were it not for my creative imagination, she'd still be a bit player on the Z Channel.
I see.
You know, she wouldn't be making the movie. It is a tribute to me, but I would like some of that money to go where it belongs. It belongs to the Fund for Animals.
Fun for, is that what you're for? Fun for animals?
Yeah. That money is theirs. It's not anybody else's. It's not for Malibu beach houses.
Why do you
or
say
BMWs.
Why is that?
Well, that's why I wanted. That's why I created
for your
Vampire.
show?
That's why I created Vampire in the first place, to raise money for the animals.
Well, don't you think the animal people should do something about that then? Why don't you let them do it and get after that? If that's
Well,
your
I
idea.
have my attorney is. Well, I mean, we're suing. We're suing for a minimum of $10 million, or a maximum of $460 million, which is in the stratosphere there somewhere. But
What have you been doing with yourself nowadays? You've been away for a long time. What has Maila been doing? What have you been doing? Where have you been?
well, I'm a mixed media artist who's very lazy and often doesn't work at all. But when I do, I write short stories, I do illustrations, I write verse, I make necklaces like this sling here, you can't see it anyway. I make beads, pins, you know, clothes for
Would you
people.
call yourself a bohemian or a hippie those days?
All of those things.
All those things?
All those
That's
things.
wonderful.
I was a bohemian in the early days,
Uh-huh.
and then beatnik.
Uh-huh.
I never really quite got to be a hippie, but I was a mother of the hippies. I had a little shop for them, and they
Did
used
you
to all come
really?
in, the flower children, yeah.
Where was this?
On Melrose.
On Melrose.
It was the first
So
Melrose
you
boutique.
really are the first Melrose lady then?
Let me say that Jimmy Dean wore these glasses. That's why I wore them today. He wore
Is
them.
that
Yeah.
really?
He
How-
wore them for about an hour. Just, I think you probably knew Jimmy longer than an
Oh,
hour,
lovely.
eh, Kenneth?
They're lovely.
But anyway, he did wear them for 1 hour.
Did he really? They're lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, they're hand carved in Italy, and I had bought them in the mid-40s. And then one night I was wearing them, and Jimmy just...
What kind of
took
people
them
used to
with
come
Mom.
to your shop when you had the shop on Melrose?
Well, Gracie Slick came there, and Little Moon Zappa came when she was 5 years old with her mama. And I had a lot of musicians from up at the Whiskey who'd come down the hill. I was right down the hill from the Whiskey, and I was making Victorian slops for them. Those are those velvet bloomers.
Whiskey used to be the place.
Kenneth remembers my shop.
Did you? Yes.
Kenneth was there. He was one of the
It
colorful
must
people.
have been very, very... I wasn't around Hollywood then.
Bob
That guy-
Mackey came in. He was next door.
Bob Mackey.
The designer. His shop was next door.
But Sunset Boulevard was hot those days, wasn't it?
Sunset. Oh, yeah.
Sunset and Melrose, those were... Melrose wasn't really that
No,
hot.
I
Melrose was not
opened
hot.
up Melrose.
He did. He opened Melrose.
What do you mean?
1953, I opened my studio there, and there was nothing. There was an occasional cleaner, real estate people, and wood shops. there
Plumbing,
about all-
plumbing
Yeah,
shop.
plumbing, yeah, things of that nature. And my
Right.
place looked like a candy shop or something. It was really painted up. It's still there. It's part of.
What would you
Preston
advise young people with creative ideas, and if they have an idea, how to protect that idea? Can they protect that idea? People, you know, what would you tell them?
Yeah, let me say that there are now some new laws in effect. They're just recent, whereby you can protect your identity and create it's easier now to protect creative products than
Yes.
it had been in the past.
Yes.
You know.
Because people steal all the time.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
There's a lot of theft in the
comics,
industry. Yeah.
they steal from comedians,
Well,
they steal from titles of shows. They,
Oh, well, speaking of stealing, may I say that Elvira has a comic book called Elvira's, what is it, Haunted House
Yes,
or something,
right,
House
right,
of Mystery
right.
or something. And they use various artists to illustrate these things.
Right.
But one of the artists has put Vampira's body on her. Now that
That's-
incenses me.
yes.
I mean, artists do idealize. She has no waistline, so they will idealize. But they put my calves on her, Vampira's calves, Vampira, you know, and
Yes.
and that incenses me.
This is the vampire's body. Where is it? I've got to show it to the people. Now, here is Elvira, and there, can you see that? This is Vampira, and this is Elvira. Look at this. This is, now, can you see that? I want to show you. You got that? Now, that is very close. See, now she reminds me of Jane Russell, Elvira, and the Outlaw. Oh, she's doing, yeah, am I correct? Look at that. That's an outlaw of Jane Russell. Between you see? But see, you were just more elegant than she was. Campy. That is called campy, isn't it?
Campy.
What makes, this is another one of you, right?
That's right.
That's the original Elvira.
Right. That's
Vampira. The original Vampira.
Yeah.
So that must really, I don't blame you. I really don't blame you to do what you have to do. Because you started on Channel
7, and then ultimately on.
Is that a half-hour show?
No, you run the movie, and so and
You
everything
did the
else.
movies and stuff?
Sure,
Yeah.
run, oh, of course.
So you did the same,
It's a 2-hour
identical?
show. Identical, the same set, the same
Same-
corridor to come in and everything, yeah. Same 2 sets, right.
What your lawyer's going to do about it? Does it look good for you?
Yeah,
do you think?
it looks good, but then you never know. You never know.
Do you live in California? You've been living here all this time?
Uh-huh.
I see.
All the while.
Kenneth, any new people you are doing at the moment?
No, no.